Welcome, everybody, to another episode of PHM from Pittsburgh. I am still your host, Dr. Tony Tarchichi. In case you're new, I'm a MedPeds trained pediatric hospitalist here at UPMC Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh in the Paul C. Gaffney Division of Pediatric Hospital Medicine, coming to you again in this warm January morning to talk about something rather interesting. Normally, we have been sticking to the core competencies or the content specifications from the American Board of Pediatrics for Pediatric Hospital Medicine. But as you all know, every so often, if an interesting topic comes up, that we have veered off to discuss it because I'm sure you don't only want to hear about hospital medicine, but there's stuff within pediatrics that's somewhat interesting. And this was a topic that I came across that I simply couldn't pass up. I mean, I just find the story to be fascinating. So I'm going to keep you in suspense for a moment. I'm going to introduce our special guest, and we're going to talk about what she did. Now, our special guest today is Dr. Jennifer H. Schwang, an adolescent medicine physician in New Jersey. She had completed a MedPeds residency at what is now Rutgers, New Jersey Medical School in Newark, New Jersey. Used to be University of Medicine and Dentistry of New Jersey. From there, she completed her adolescent medicine fellowship at Columbia University Medical Center and obtained a Master of Science in Patient-Oriented Research at the Mailman School of Public Health at Columbia. She then spent the next 7 years at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia as the Medical Director of Adolescent Inpatient Services and Assistant Professor of Clinical Pediatrics at the Perelman School of Medicine at the University of Pennsylvania. She's recently joined St. Joseph's University Medical Center in Paterson, New Jersey as the Section Chief of Adolescent Medicine and Associate Director of the Pediatric Residency Program. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Dr. Jennifer Schwang on the show.
Thank you, Dr. Tartucci. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. Now, Jen, we have to do our disclosure statements for the conflict of interest, so I will go first. I have nothing to disclose.
And I have nothing to disclose.
So, keeping everyone on suspense, Jen, why don't you tell people what you did that I found so fascinating?
Well, in 2017, I had run in the Democratic primary for the New Jersey State Assembly for Legislative District 7, which is Burlington County in South Jersey.
Now, one of the things I find that fascinating is because we hear in the news and we hear even in our medical news that there are so few pediatricians in Congress or in elected office in general. So the fact that we have one who ran, I find absolutely fascinating. And as a full disclosure for everyone listening, Jen and I were in residency together. She was a year ahead of me, my senior, and we have remained friends. So if we seem very cordial on this podcast, we're friends outside of this, but this was something I really wanted to talk about. So tell me, Jen, what made you decide to run?
Well, I think that up until then, I had always seen myself as somebody who was really involved with advocacy. And so in the past, I had done plenty of going on the Hill type of days with the American Academy of Pediatrics or Society for Adolescent Health and Medicine, or sometimes I went as a private citizen for other pediatric concerns such as childhood cancer research. And I had been pretty outspoken about the things that I strongly believed in. I think that as you and I were in training together, you often witnessed some of my activity. But it's true that in 2016, I was seeing a lot of the worrisome rhetoric that was going on during that election. And as I was really looking at the results coming in 2016, I just had to stare at the computer screen, as a TV and as a newspaper, and really just say, who are we electing into office? And are we doing everything that we can to make a difference? And it's not just a difference for my family, but it's really a difference for our patients. And as pediatricians, our patients don't have a vote, so we have to be able to be the ones to raise our voices for them. What happened at that time in early 2017, one of our state senators in South Jersey had announced that she was going to retire. She was actually a very popular state senator, and when I saw that there was an opening for that, I knew that one of our assembly people was going to run for her seat, and that meant that there was going to be an opening in our New Jersey State Assembly, which is the analogous to the House of Representatives, but on a state level. And so I saw an opening, and I said, you know what, this is going to be the time, and I decided to make a move for it and put my papers in to announce that I was going to run for office.
Okay, so now take me back. How do you decide? How do you go from, I'm thinking about running for office, I'd like to run for office, to I am running for office? How does that happen?
A lot of it was gut feeling. I actually did not seriously consider myself running for office. I really was just picturing myself previous to that as just a very active physician and active citizen. And what had happened was I saw that there was an opening, and I was really repeating a mantra to myself over and over again of, if you're not at the table, then you're on the menu. And I think that was a saying that was popularized by Harvey Milk. But I was saying it to myself over and over again of who is out there making our laws for us. And this was, of course, at a time at the end of 2016, beginning of 2017, that we were hearing so much rhetoric that was questioning really what should have been sound science. And all of a sudden, I felt like a lot of misinformation was taking to the airwaves. And I really had to say to myself, where are the voices of those who are trained in science? Where are our voices in medicine? And we did not have many voices, especially those that were trained in primary care. So we did not see many people in pediatrics, internal medicine, or family medicine that were really out there speaking. A few voices here and there, but not in large number. And so I can't say that it was a well planned out decision to say, oh, for the last 10 years I've been picturing myself running for office. It really was in a matter of a week. I had made that decision saying, maybe the time is now, and this is the time that's important. I have patients that are in tears, not knowing if anybody is out there hearing them, and so we have to go out there and speak for them.
Now, a week is not a long time to decide to change your life like this. Because you were full-time at CHOP, you're the director of the Adolescent Inpatient Services, you're busy.
Right. And on top of my full-time job, I was also in the middle of getting a master's of medical education. So I had a lot on my plate at the time, not to mention 2 young kids.
You're in the middle, oh my goodness. Okay, so, for everyone listening, normally I have kept the podcast out of politics because everyone has different opinions. Everyone's entitled to their opinions, and I don't want to get into politics here. What I find fascinating is that we have so few physicians who run for any type of office on either side of the ticket. And I love hearing about those who've tried and the story behind it, because there's always a story and there's always something that happened. And at the very least, we can learn from it, and maybe the next physician who runs, no matter what party you run for, can learn from what Dr. Jen Schwang did here. So tell me about the logistics. So it's a week. You decide you're going to do it. What do you have to do?
Well, there were some logistics involved with that. Of course, I was committed to my career, to my full-time job. And so I definitely did not want to pursue going in a different direction without having respectfully told my division at CHOP and making sure that I was not dropping any of my crucial responsibilities. So although the institution itself is not able to publicly support a candidate or anything like that, I can say that from a personal level, my colleagues were very, very supportive. And for my own work responsibilities, I kept on my duties as the medical director of the Adolescent Inpatient Services. I went down from 100% down to 75%, and the areas that I dropped were more of my outpatient clinic areas. So I felt very strongly that I did not want anybody else to be doing my inpatient call, because as you and I know, changing a call schedule can be a bit cumbersome. So I wanted to make sure that I was still meeting all of my responsibility as the inpatient medical director. But as I said, the clinical responsibilities were the ones that I had dropped at that time. Also, as much as I really, really loved getting my master's in medical education, because it was such a wonderful learning experience, I had to look realistically that I could not keep that up if I was going to also go out there and campaign. So I had dropped out of the Master's of Medical Education.
Okay, now let me ask you this. You're going to your spouse, your husband, and you're saying, I want to run for office. Is he surprised, supportive, kind of taken off guard, or did he kind of expect this and, all right, fine, sure? Do you mind talking about that?
Well, I think everybody in my family, everybody was very surprised. I would say that the people who surround me also come from a variety of backgrounds. So I definitely wear my heart on my sleeve. So I think for people who knew me well, they knew that the things that I felt strongly about were very important to me. So they actually were not that surprised that this was something that I ultimately wound up doing. But it's always shocking to move from being more in the medical realm to doing something that's completely unknown. It's not like we were ever trained for this. I would say that probably in terms of at home, I more have told myself saying, this is really important to me, and, I think it's going to be hard, but I feel like as a person, as a physician, I need to do it. And so that was my announcement at home. My announcement to the rest of my family, such as my parents, that was also taken very much by surprise. My parents moved to the U.S. from Taiwan in the 1960s. They grew up in the time of post-World War II when really the Taiwanese people were being oppressed, and really people who spoke out were killed or disappeared, or terrible, devastating things happened to people who spoke out. So my family had witnessed that professors and other people who were trying to do their best to speak up for the people, they wound up again killed or just disappeared and never came back. So I think that growing up there was a culture of not wanting to stir the pot, and I think that a lot of that came from their history.
So now you've told your family, you've talked to your employer, everybody is supportive, or at least getting behind you. What are the logistics of actually getting onto a ticket or running? And do you have to get signatures? And how'd you go about doing that?
The bare basics, and really most state websites should be able to say what would be involved in running for office. But for New Jersey, if you look on the state website, it really said to get a certain number of signatures on a petition and to really hand it in by a certain date. So those are the bare bones of what's necessary. And me not being involved intricately with a party at that time, I didn't realize that there was actually much more involved with that behind the scenes of what is normally necessary to run for office.
What do you mean?
So I think you remember when I was a resident. Again, my politics are always pretty obvious on my sleeve for any of my friends. That I was always fairly left-leaning. I was always a member of the Democratic Party, but it's not like I ever went to party functions. I had never been. Nobody ever invited me to any of those things. So it did not actually occur to me how involved and frankly how powerful those influences were. So I was probably naive. I was naive and thinking that I, as a concerned citizen, I thought that I just threw my hat in the ring, and I thought that I had a pretty decent background of, being a physician and being triple boarded in adolescent medicine, internal medicine, and pediatrics, as well as having a public health degree. I thought that I could speak pretty intelligently about the issues that were at stake. But what I had not realized at the time was most people in New Jersey need many years of relationship with their political party to also gain the party support. And so that was one of the most eye-opening areas for me.
So the local party politics we're talking about.
Right.
So now how did the signatures, were they just easy? You had your friends and colleagues sign and that was that? Or did you go door to door?
Both. I made my announcement through various venues of letters to the editor or announcements at community events. It was picked up by local papers, obviously using social media as well. So the information spread out, at least locally, pretty quickly. And so some people came to me pretty easily willing to fill out the signatures. But I also went door to door to obtain some signatures as well. And you'll always want to get them extra for good measure too.
So you wrote letters to the editor, and then you tried to use the local media to get the word out. Were they? It sounds like they were pretty sure. We're happy to print your letter to the editor if you're running for office. Was that how it went? Almost cooperative.
And I'm talking about the local press of South Jersey. So a lot of them did not require purchasing of ads or anything like that, or were not part of the big mainstream media of Philadelphia. So the smaller publications were willing to to print my letter to the editor, or if I had a guest opinion, or I also had a speech announcement that was also covered by the local reporters as well. So it was nice to get that coverage. And of course, social media, we try to use as much free exposure as we could.
So is that how you got your name out there? You used as much social media for the press, whatever they would cover, and then you went to community events, and that's how you got your name out there?
It was probably not the traditional way of people getting their message out there, but that was what I used because I had very little money and I did not have an organized team. I was not part of the big political parties, so I did not have a force that was ready-made, that was out there to help me. I had to kind of scramble around to find some people.
So you're kind of going it alone with whatever friends and family are willing to help.
Right.
Now, when you're talking to people and you're running for office, did you find that because you're a physician, you're a pediatrician, did you find that people responded to you more warmly or no?
For the most part, yes. However, and I'm sure we'll get into this a little bit later during this interview, it also really surprised me how much people were suspicious of having a pediatrician run for office because of our support for vaccinations. So I ran for office in an area that I grew up in. So I was born and raised in the town that I was living in. I went through the public school system. I was really pretty well recognized in town. I mean, to be honest, while we were growing up in the 80s, we were one of the few families of color in town, so we were pretty recognizable as like the only Taiwanese family in town that had been around for the last 40 years. And by the time that I had moved back to town with my family, the demographics of the town had changed by then, but people still remembered me as the kid that grew up there in the 80s. And also my father had a dental practice that was well recognized in town while we were growing up. So we like people knew who we were for the most part in town. So when I announced that I was interested in running, actually we had supporters from both the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, the Independents. They were actually more excited that somebody locally that they knew, that they had trusted, was running for office, really actually regardless of which party I was running with. And that was probably the most heartwarming part of getting the local support of people that knew me.
That's nice. I mean, it's better to have a local person, and that's probably what people thought. So now you kind of alluded to it. Let's get into it. So one of your central campaign issues was increasing vaccination rates in New Jersey. Is that right?
That became one of my more recognized issues. I think that when I was first announcing my run, I was trying to actually keep it very broad in healthcare. I was more worried about healthcare coverage. You and I, training in Newark, we treated so many people who were uninsured, and it was so devastating to me. And in the early 2000s, this was also when the federal administration was trying to repeal the Affordable Care Act, not to mention that on the House side, that was really, the repeal was being led by my own congressman at the time. So I was really, at the time, trying to focus on healthcare coverage, but I had said something in the course of my announcements that I was also really worried about the language and rhetoric that people were using in spreading misinformation about vaccinations. And I actually had come across a bill that I actually don't think was, seriously considered in trend, but at least it was there. It was introduced as saying that they just wanted vaccinations to just be optional. And I just stared at that and I thought, who are the people that we are electing into office? And how are we not allowing sound science to really be educating our lawmakers in regarding the health of our children and to the public? And so it was just astounding to me. I'm actually pulling up the bill now. The synopsis of the bill was permits exemption from mandatory immunization for students in writing for any reason. And so I just looked at that, baffled, and that was just, the issue of vaccinations was just one of the many things that I had wanted to run on, but I learned that very quickly that was what many people in the public had latched onto as the thing that they were either going to praise me or really attack me for.
Yeah, I mean, famously, Dr. Paul Offit at CHOP, the director of vaccine education, the education center there, has said to people who've interviewed him, and he said he has a file at his desk that his wife has as well of death threats that he's gotten because of his efforts to promote vaccinations, which I, as a pediatrician, very much agree with. Vaccination should be promoted. And initially, the journalist interviewing kind of laughed, thinking, I guess it was a joke or a nervous laughter. And he said, "I'm not kidding. If something happens to me, my wife knows to take this file to the police because he has been getting death threats." And then also famously, California State Senator Dr. Richard Pan also got assaulted, and the person live streamed it as he was walking down the street. So there's just a violent rhetoric in the anti-vaccination group with some of the people. I'm sure people just want to talk about it, but there is a violent rhetoric. How did that play out during your campaign?
It's true that the rhetoric just rose and rose and rose, and I've certainly faced my share of protesters regarding various other reasons, but that was my real first time facing protesters regarding vaccination, and it just baffled me because I was thinking, in the medical school setting, this is not something that's controversial at all. Yeah. But yet you step out into the public, and this is what people are shouting about and holding signs for. So I've had conversations with both Dr. Pan and Dr. Offit in regarding that experience. At the time, in early 2017, Dr. Pan was the only pediatrician on a state legislature or federal level, at least that was outspoken about vaccination. So I was seeing a lot of the attacks that he was getting starting to come my way as well. And actually, to be frank, some of the attacks against me were quite racist and sometimes put both Dr. Pan and I within the same attacks. Personally, I was actually I would be honored to be included in the same sentence as Dr. Pan, but many of the attacks were directed at us in a quite racist way. As I had said earlier, not having the party support, I actually didn't have political endorsement, but it was actually interesting to me that the people that did endorse me were physicians. So Dr. Paul Offit had been one of my endorsements, as well as Dr. Peter Hotez in Texas, as well as a law professor, Dorit Rubenstein-Rice, out in California. So 3 vaccine experts that I very much admire had supported me in my venture here as well. When I actually pulled up some of the attacks that I got online because it became quite vitriolic. And I'm just reading to you, Tony, some of the attacks that had come towards me. They would say, herd immunity doesn't exist and you know it. I'm protecting my kids from this monster. Well, some of this language I actually can't say out loud, but evil, sadistic, pharma, expletive. And then let's see. Some of them became much more threatening as well. I trade a shot for a shot. You come at me with a needle, I draw a gun. Shot for a shot, my shot wins. When a doctor comes at you with a needle and a threat, draw your shot and inject them first. My shot is measured in caliber, almost half inch.
I mean, these are threats.
Yes, yeah.
Did you go
a 45
to the police?
caliber will cure mandates. I mean, these were the attacks that were coming my way.
Did you go to the police?
I did report it with the police, and so they filed a report. And this was actually escalating towards the primary election day. And since I had lost the election, well, then the attacks were not nearly as threatening after that. So that was as far as my police report had gone. But yeah, it was really interesting how threatened people feel by having a pediatrician running for office. And of course, pediatricians are going to support vaccinations.
Yeah, and we're some of the most non-threatening people. I mean, anyone listening who's a pediatrician will agree we're not the group to scare you.
Right.
We're the group to probably have a funny animal on our stethoscope to entertain your child. So,
and I think that anecdotally, most pediatricians I know are pretty introverted. They really only want to talk to their patients and families. If you ask them to do a large public speech, most people are very nervous to do it. If you ask them to go into a hostile, confrontational situation, like most pediatricians will say, no, thanks. I'm happy practicing in the office or seeing my patients on the inpatient setting. And they are not people who are antagonistic, but they will certainly advocate very strongly for their patients, who are kids who, again, do not have much of a voice in the voting realm. So it is important that we look out for the health of our kids.
yeah, I mean, that's part of the reason for us being here is we're trying to help the health of children all around. That's one of the reasons for the podcast is it gets information out there so some people can use it to take care of children. I mean, that's the point of what we do. Our bigger goal, our bigger life goal is to help children stay healthier for longer and let them lead productive lives. And I mean, vaccinations just work, but I mean, here you are running for office, trying to do a civic duty. You felt, you felt you wanted to do it. You went through the paperwork and did it. And then this happened. This had to throw you for a loop.
I had a suspicion that I would get a little bit attacked for the vaccinations. I did not think that it would come to the level that it did. Although now that I see what's been happening for the last 2 years in my state as well as in other states, I really should not have been surprised. But it was definitely very eye-opening of what was occurring, and that people made a lot of assumptions of who I am and what I support and who supports me. The number of people who really thought that I was being supported by pharmaceutical companies was really laughable to me. I mean, you will remember that. I mean, I don't even take a pen or a lunch or a coffee from a pharmaceutical company, and to think that I was being called a pharmaceutical shill, and it was just laughable.
That's the funny, because when for those of you listening, when Jen and I were in training, it was towards the end of the pharmaceuticals' ability to come in and talk to residents and give free stuff. We were getting free pens, this and that, and you would not take it. It's true. I remember you wouldn't take a thing, whereas I would take a pen and you would not.
I said, Tony, I can buy my own pen.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So tell me, kind of moving away from this, the campaign, you have to know a whole host of other issues besides healthcare. Were there things you were unfamiliar with that you had to learn to talk about them when people were asking questions at a debate, or were you in any debates?
Well, of course, my strength was healthcare, so I knew that there was a lot that I had to learn. In my state, public education funding was a large issue, and so I had to learn about that very quickly because we had at stake the state funding formula for our schools. So I very much acknowledge the areas that I did not know about very much, and so one of the first groups that I sat down with to say, help me learn more about this, were teachers in the district, because I wanted to learn what were the issues that our teachers were facing, what was happening inside the school walls, what are they struggling with their funding, what's happening with their retirement plans, and I needed to learn about that really quickly. Just like any state or federal government, infrastructure is of utmost importance, and so I did have to learn, where is our tax money going? in terms of, the buildings, the roads, the transportation, New Jersey Transit, the Port Authority, our bridges and tunnels. So learning where our state money was being allocated was also an area that I really needed to learn about. Of course, I'm still not an expert in it, but it was an area that I realized that I needed to start learning about. In terms of debate, I touched on that I was not being supported by the political party. So I really had to think about whether I was going to be an instigator and how much I really wanted to attack the other people who were running. And I had, you know me, Tony, I don't like attacking other people. And so even though I feel like it's important to raise our voices, I also do not enjoy being confrontational and attacking. So I thought about whether I should, call for a debate. And in the end, I actually decided against it. And I really wanted all of the candidates to put our best faces forward. In the end, it was 3 of us running for 2 spots. One of them was an incumbent. One of them was a new person running for office, but somebody who had been well experienced within the political arena. And then there was me. And what I didn't realize was that there had not been a contested primary for the Democratic Party in our district for at least 18 years. So
really?
I did not realize how much trouble I was causing just by me saying, oh, I want to run for office. I want to run for state assembly, because apparently for over a decade, it was, nobody questioned the party. Nobody ran against the chosen one. And so apparently that was ruffling the feathers a little bit.
Okay. Well, I mean, I think you did your civic duty. You put your hat in the ring. It did not work out, and there were some what sounds like scary moments.
It's okay.
Yeah.
I'm actually very happy with the 2 who got elected to that position. So, so it's okay.
Okay, good. Now, everything's said and done. What would you say you learned from this process?
Well, if I were in the same place in 2017, I think I would still do it again. So I'm glad that I put my foot forward. Is there more that I would have done to prepare? Sure. I would have gone to election training, how to run for office type of courses and training camps and stuff like that. I would have built up more of a base for probably several years. I would have built up more funding. And I really have to think about whether I would have done more to ingratiate myself with the powerful players in the political party. I really would like for other pediatricians to run for office as well. So I think that over the last 2 years, we've seen a lot more physicians, including pediatricians, really mobilize in being outspoken and in advocacy and also in running for office. I mean, we see Congresswoman Kim Schreier in Washington. We still have Dr. Richard Pan in California as the state senator. And we have a few other people in state legislature, I think in Colorado and Ohio, and I'm sure I'm missing some other states. So definitely in 2018, we saw more people in medicine get elected into office. And so that's heartwarming. And also seeing the young people, such as the residents as well as medical students, really voice their wish to be taught more about advocacy. That has also been heartwarming as well. And I've really been glad that I've been able to impart some of my experience onto them. Not that they have to replicate it, but at least that they know it's okay to step out of the zone of what you're usually taught, to try something a little bit different if it's going to be for the health of your children.
And I think Arnold Schwarzenegger famously says it's okay to fail. It's okay to try and fail as long as you keep trying. And that's the thing. I think with everything you do, you learn. And if you ever did it again, which it sounds like you would not be against, unless I'm reading too far into your comments, you've learned and you would do it a little bit better. Is that right?
Oh, I'm still undecided. There was a lot of good that came out of my run in that primary. There was also a lot that was quite nauseating. And as much as I don't enjoy attacking other people or being confrontational, One thing I also don't enjoy is begging other people for money.
Yeah,
and to run for office takes a large bank account, which I do not have. And so I'm so grateful for the people who did dig into their pockets and were willing to give me a contribution. But it is very uncomfortable for me to go out to someone and say, hey, will you donate $1,000 to me or a few $100s to me? And to do that with many, many people is very hard for me. So I think that if I were to do it again, that would be an area that I would really need to think about of, can I do better in the fundraising arena? I do love medicine, so I don't want to give up my clinical care, and I definitely don't want to give up the medical education. And I think it also took a personal toll as well. If I'm out campaigning for long hours, that means also hours that I'm not at home. And so I would really have to think about, is it worth the personal toll to go out and campaign again? But I think that if I were to do it again, I would be more prepared. Now, that being said, you and I had spoke about earlier before this recording started, I had mentioned that the bill in New Jersey regarding vaccinations had basically died last night, which I was very dismayed by, and it was short of one vote in the Senate is what I hear in the news reports. And so when I see reports like that and I just think, gosh, who's out there making our law decisions for us, then sometimes I do think, we do need more pediatricians out there in office. And, if not me, who is it going to be? But it's not anything that I'm planning for at this moment. But I certainly hope that one of my colleagues will go up and do it.
And for those listening, I guess this counts as an advocacy podcast for our content specifications, which we can do that. But there are also positions. Most Congress people, state or national, Republican or Democrat or Independent, have healthcare committees, and you can always volunteer to be on a healthcare committee. Most Congress people, one way or another, would love to have a physician on there, especially if it's local. You're a local physician taking care of people in that community, and people know you and recognize you. They'd probably love to have you on from the meetings and help shape their policy, which is something we can also do as pediatricians or physicians as well.
And also, most medical societies also have some type of advocacy or government affairs committee. So me being a pediatrician, an adolescent medicine physician, I'm also a member of the American Academy of Pediatrics and Society for Adolescent Health and Medicine. And each of those organizations has groups in regards to advocacy. And the American Academy of Pediatrics also has a state chapter. So I do recommend being very involved with your state chapter. And for the New Jersey state chapter, we do have pediatricians who are committed to government affairs and also are willing to allocate their time towards speaking with legislatures or in helping educating the public regarding these issues as well.
Jen, this has been wonderful. I am so happy you threw your hat in the ring, because I was when you did it, and we were there, and Megan, my wife, got the Facebook post, and we were just so proud of you and happy for you. Because we love you as a person, and we of course supported you because we knew you so well and we believed in you. I'm sorry you lost, but I really appreciate you coming on the podcast and talking about it.
Thank you, Tony. I really appreciate you having me on here.
I think we're going to wrap it up. For all of those of you listening, I hope you enjoyed this one. We were unfortunately unable to offer free CME credit for this particular podcast episode, but we will continue offering it for other episodes. I do apologize for the inconvenience. But Jen, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on. Thanks again.
Thank you, Tony.